Katrina. You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So first things first, there's a new feature on YouTube that I just found out about. It's called Super Thanks, I believe. It works kind of like the Super Chat when you go live, but now instead of only tipping on live videos, you can now go ahead and do it on any video that I upload. So if you like what I'm doing over here at Dante's Boxing Nation and you want more of that whole truth talk, you can show that love in the Super Thanks section. Now let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, you guys have heard me say on my channel for years that the walls are closing in on Canelo Alvarez. Now today, those walls are so close to Canelo, he can barely move. You see, what some people don't know when it comes to Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez's original opponent was supposed to be a fighter by the name of Makabu. I forget how to pronounce his first name, but he has a belt at cruiserweight. Makabu, as you can see in these clips right here, he's the guy that's getting knocked out for the second time of his career. This man had no skill at all, no defense. He had no type of rhythm or coordination. All he had was a belt. So naturally for Canelo Alvarez, this was the perfect fight for him. As you can see in these clips right here, when they met, Canelo Alvarez is extremely elated because he was sure some network was going to pay him $30–40 million to fight Makabu next, just to find out that no network was willing to pay him for this fight. Even Eddie Hearn, who has become very close to Canelo Alvarez, he's already said that he's desperate, that's the word he used, to work with Canelo Alvarez, so he's willing to do anything and say anything just to keep making money with Canelo Alvarez. In fact, right before Canelo lost to Bivol, Eddie Hearn said that Canelo Alvarez might be the greatest fighter of all time. But even a man like Eddie Hearn, a man that's willing to do almost anything just to satisfy Canelo Alvarez, even he couldn't give Canelo Alvarez the very easy fight that Canelo wanted next. Because DAZN did the math, and they understood that they would lose an enormous amount of money, because there would be no interest from the fans to watch Canelo fight a completely unknown fighter that has no chance of winning. DAZN already lost money hosting the Canelo Kovalev fight, the Canelo Rocky Fielding fight. And because of that, they now realize that all they're going to do is lose even more money. And the only person that would really benefit from this situation financially is Canelo Alvarez. So what Eddie and DAZN said, they said, look, man, we know you want this Makabu fight, but do us a favor first. Take on a tough challenge first. You get past the tough challenge, and then we will give you whatever easy fight you want. That was the deal, basically. So they gave them the 2-fight deal, right? Fight Bivol, fight the 40-year-old Gennady Golovkin. Then after that, you could cherry pick away. But obviously the problem was Canelo would have to get across that Bivol bridge, which wasn't going to happen. Eddie Hearn, who's been hanging out with Canelo since the loss, he went out, played golf with Canelo, and he revealed that Canelo Alvarez is devastated when it comes to this loss. And he basically told Eddie that he wants the rematch. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play the clip of Eddie Hearn talking about how devastated Canelo Alvarez is, how upset he is when it comes to this loss by Bivol. But before I do, I want to play another clip about Bivol saying that he may go down to 168 and fight Canelo for all of his belts. Now, if you guys recall, I made a video on that. I reported what Bivol said, and I said that if Bivol were to move down to 168 and challenge Canelo Alvarez for all of his belts, that would be a game changer. And it would be the most embarrassing loss for Canelo Alvarez. There would almost be no coming back from that. And Eddie Hearn, who was Canelo Alvarez's biggest advocate, he all but corroborated every single point that I made when I was talking about this situation. The only difference is he said it in more of a politically correct way because he represents Canelo Alvarez. So just pay attention to exactly what Eddie Hearn says in this clip when he talks about Bivol possibly moving down to 168 for all of Canelo Alvarez's belts. Check it out.
But also he could move to 68 and do the rematch for the undisputed. But I also think Canelo wouldn't want to fight him at 68 because this is like, you know, that Canelo deal against Bivol.
So did you guys hear that? Eddie said Canelo Alvarez wouldn't want to fight Bivol at 168. Why would Canelo not want the fight at 168 when Canelo and even Eddie Hearn himself, they're saying that the weight was too much? If you're using the weight excuse for why you lost, and a fighter is offering to come down to your weight, wouldn't that make all the sense in the world to take the fight at that weight class? Eddie says, but Canelo wouldn't want to do that. And then you could hear Eddie, he was about to say something else, but then he changed it and he just left it at, we know that Bivol deal. Meaning, we know he's gonna have major problems with Bivol. And if he were, like I told you, to lose, if Canelo Alvarez were to allow this man to come down and beat him at 168, it makes the excuse of size look that much worse. The excuse already looks bad because Canelo Alvarez was already attempting to fight against Makabu, and there was talks of him, going up to fight Usyk, and there were all these reports of him sparring with heavyweights. So the excuse is already hypocritical. But if Bivol comes down to 168, even the most loyal people that are using that excuse to defend Canelo, they would have to even abandon that excuse. Speaking of Makabu, Eddie actually started off this interview saying that, Canelo Alvarez, he was fighting at a weight class that he should have never been at, basically using a size excuse, as Canelo Alvarez did himself. But the reporter actually contradicted Eddie by saying, well, it was only months before this fight that there was talks of Canelo fighting Makabu. There was even talks of him going up to fight Usyk. And Eddie Hearn actually said, well, styles make fights. I believe that Canelo, he would beat Makabu. It would be a much easier fight than the Usyk fight. So if Eddie Hearn is saying that Canelo Alvarez doesn't want that fight at 168 against Bivol, if he's saying that styles make fights, but he believes that Canelo can beat Makabu at cruiserweight, then that proves that the size excuse, it doesn't fly. It means that Canelo, he lost this fight because styles make fights. And Bivol is a much, much, much better boxer than Canelo Alvarez ever was. When you lose to someone because of size, usually the smaller guy is doing a really, really good job outboxing the bigger guy. He's in the fight. He's just as intelligent. He may even be smarter than the big guy, right? But eventually, the power is the great equalizer. We seen this when Steve Cunningham, when he fought against Tyson Fury. Steve Cunningham, he managed to knock down Tyson Fury, and he was winning a lot of the early rounds. But after rounds and rounds of the much, much bigger Tyson Fury leaning on Steve Cunningham, using his weight and size advantage, he was able to get Cunningham out of there. We seen this with Kell Brook and Gennady Golovkin. Early rounds, Kell Brook was the one that was looking good. He was outboxing Golovkin. We seen this in the Amir Khan versus Canelo Alvarez fight. Smaller guy getting off first, winning rounds, making the fight extremely competitive. But the best example to use is when the great Sugar Ray Robinson, he moved up to light heavyweight, and he challenged the champion Joey Maxim for his belt. And Robinson, he was winning the entire fight easy. It was one of his best performances. The light heavyweight champion of the world, Maxim, he needed a knockout to win the fight. He didn't knock out Robinson, but the heat knocked Sugar Ray out. It was 105 degrees in the ring. After the 10th round, the referee had collapsed, passed out, and had to be replaced by another referee. They had a lot of spectators, a lot of ringside spectators that also passed out. So around the 14th round, Sugar Ray Robinson, he could no longer continue because he was so exhausted from the heat. And Maxim, he remained the light heavyweight champion. Now the point of that story is, once again, the smaller guy was the smarter fighter. He was the better boxer. he was the guy that could adjust. In the Canelo-Bivol fight, the bigger guy was the smarter guy. The bigger guy had the better defense. The bigger guy was the better boxer. In fact, you could say the bigger puncher in this fight was Canelo Alvarez. Big punchers that usually rely on their power and their size to get you out of there, they are usually one-dimensional and don't really know how to adjust. And that was Canelo Alvarez in this fight. Bivol was the one doing all of the adjusting. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this next clip. So in this next clip, Eddie Hearn is really giving Canelo Alvarez some tough love. At least towards the end of this clip, when Eddie Hearn, he explains to Canelo Alvarez how important it will be to make sure you win the rematch with Bivol if you decide to take the rematch next. Check this clip out, guys.
Styles make fights and every fight is different. Makabu, in my opinion, is an easier fight than Dimitri Bivol. I think Bivol showed how good he was. There was always the feeling from people that Bivol was an exceptional fighter. He proved it. I said to him, how did you feel? And he said, I felt tired, to be honest with you. And I thought he looked tired after 3-4 rounds. You know, I said, do you have a good camp? He said, yeah, you know, a few niggles, like every fighter does. It's not, you know, he said, but no excuses. He says, I just, you know, I didn't feel great in there. He said, maybe it was the weight, you know, because he didn't make weight. He just probably ate himself up to 174. He also, I think, acknowledges that Dimitri Bivol boxed really well at the same time. But he was just gutted, devastated. And I said, what do you want to do? You know, he said, I want to rematch Bivol. I know I can beat him. I said, but, you know, obviously you've got to be right, because back-to-back defeats for Saul Canelo Alvarez is not a good look. No, I will not lose again. I mean, this is, you know, same with AJ. It's a similar boat.
Okay, guys, so you heard Eddie Hearn. He told Canelo Alvarez, you got to be right, because losing back-to-back is not a good look. And that is regardless if the fight is at 168 or 75. Eddie Hearn had already said before this interview that he prefers Canelo Alvarez to take the Gennady Golovkin fight. He said it once again in this interview. He said this actually makes the Golovkin fight even bigger, because now people will give Golovkin more of a chance to win the fight. But for a fighter as prideful as Canelo Alvarez, that's a tough pill to swallow, because your promoter and everyone around you, they're telling you, hey man, this Bivol guy, he's just better than you. You know, you're not as good as him, so let's take an easier opponent. You know, that way we keep you winning. And once again, when you're a fighter full of pride, you're looking at that and you're saying to yourself, man, these guys really don't believe that I can beat them. And even if you know deep down that Bivol is going to be a hell of a mountain to climb, when you have that type of pride, it makes you say, man, I have to beat this guy for the respect. I can't have people thinking that I can only beat 40-year-olds and I can only beat the Billy Joe Saunders, you know, the Yodirams and the Caleb Smiths. I really want to prove to everyone that Bivol is not better than me. Now, guys, there's no guarantee that Canelo is going to take the Bivol rematch. I mean, he did tell Eddie Hearn that he wants the rematch, but at the same time, he said he's going to talk to Eddie Reynoso, and then they'll get back to Eddie Hearn. Something else we have to factor in is the fact that Bivol, he already made it clear in the rematch, he's not going to concede to all of Canelo Alvarez's demands and just take crumbs. In this fight, Bivol wants to get paid. He wants to get the respect of the champion that he is, since he already beat Canelo. So it'll be interesting to see how bad Canelo Alvarez really wants to avenge this loss. So we'll see if Canelo Alvarez is willing to just swallow his pride and just take fights that he deems to be easier. Remember, guys, when Oscar De La Hoya lost to Shane Mosley, Oscar, he rejected an immediate rematch. In fact, Shane Mosley went years trying to push for the rematch, and Shane Mosley was the guy who won the first fight. It wasn't until Shane Mosley lost to Vernon Forrest twice, that's when Oscar De La Hoya decided to do the second fight with Shane Mosley. Then you have fighters like Antonio Margarito, who lost to Paul Williams. In same situation, Paul Williams, he beats Margarito, and he calls out Margarito for the rest of his career. Margarito turns down the rematch. He never takes the rematch. So the question is, when it comes to rematches, we're only talking about rematches. Does Canelo want to take the Oscar De La Hoya route, the Antonio Margarito route, or does he want to take the Sugar Ray Leonard route when Sugar Ray Leonard lost to Duran? And we know what he did 6 months later. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram.